Welcome to today's webinar presented by Supercoder.com. Supercoder.com is an online coding solution offering Part A and B coding reference tools, resources, and not more than 30 specialty coding and compliance newsletters from the Coding Institute in one site. I hope you enjoy this short session.
Regarding antiphospholipid antibody. Now, this doesn't directly impact obstetric coding, but it does in a way because of the secondary code that you might want to add to the existing code 649.3 when the patient has this particular condition. So now in the book there is a code, of course, for raised titers. There is also now a new code for the antibody with hemorrhagic disorder, which is the most severe state for this. And then we have an established code, the 289.81, which is just for the condition being an abnormality and it's a tendency towards blood clotting. Obviously, if there's a tendency towards blood clotting, this may, in fact, impact a pregnancy if the woman has this particular problem. There also is now a new other code, 286.59, for anything else that might fall into that particular category. So again, as far as our specialty is concerned, the only time you would need to know these changes would be in the case of the pregnant patient, and then identifying a secondary code to further explain the condition that the mother had to set up the seriousness of her particular problem. The ICD-9 folks thought it would be a good idea also to add some codes for cystostomy. A cystostomy is basically a hole in the bladder, and we have several codes that can be used for this type of complication. Infection of the hole in the bladder, we have mechanical complication of a cystostomy. In other words, a stent was placed and it created a particular problem. And then there's, of course, the other code and then the other specified disorders of the bladder. In particular, the 596.89, you would be reporting if there were adhesions located around the bladder or in the around the bladder or actually on the bladder. This would be an excellent code for you to use for that. It appears now that we are having an increase in tuberculosis in this country, and there are more than one type of test that can be done to test for it. Therefore, the feeling was it would be nice to know if the positive reaction to the test was due to the usual PPD or the Manitou test, or whether it was done to the new QFT test, which is a more definitive test that's being done. So we have two, they're not unspecified, but they're non-specific codes. In other words, it's the finding based on the test. We have not established when you use either of these codes that the patient has active tuberculosis. So we have 795.51, which is the reaction to a TB skin test. That would either be the Manitou or the PPD, and we have 795.52, which is the reaction to that cell-mediated immunity test, which is much more specific and, of course, a more extensive test as well. Then we do have a change here that is going to impact you guys, and it has to do with the vaginal mesh complications. If any of your surgeons are putting in vaginal meshes for cystocele, rectocele, intercele repairs using those lovely mesh kits, you guys already know that one of the number one side effects to this or complications of this is erosion or exposure of the vaginal tissue coming through the vaginal canal. Infection is fairly rare as a complication, but the erosion and the exposure are two biggies. Therefore, ACOG had asked for specifically ICD-9 codes that will track this particular complication. There's been multiple articles about this now. Payers are looking at this issue as well. and data is now being collected on the rate of complication for these mesh-type surgeries. So you're not going to report 996.39 if there is either an eroded vaginal graft or an exposure of the graft. Instead, you're going to use the
Supercoder is the fastest-growing online reference tool with more than 25,000 subscribers. Call 866-228-9252 to get a free product demo or sign up at supercoder.com for a 7-day free trial.